All right, hello everyone, and welcome. It is Tuesday, January 29th, and we are here in week 4 in the home stretch of the class. By now, you should have your music and sound effects working in the game. Last week, you used Wise to implement both the music and the sound effects. And now should have the opportunity to check everything out and see how it is working in the game. If you are having any sort of troubles, any sort of technical issues that are getting in the way of your game, and your music functioning properly in the game, please let me know now. This week is certainly the time to reach out with any sort of issues, any sort of errors that you might be running into, so that we can troubleshoot any problems and make sure that everything is kind of wrapped up and finished by the end of the month. So I didn't find any sort of anybody who had fires going on their end with Wise or the audio or the game not working. So I will generally assume that things are working properly, and the assignments this week are all about finishing out the work and the projects that you've worked on, and being able to show them off in the best light possible. We'll talk about the industry as a whole. We'll talk about how do you sort of take everything that you've learned, all of the materials and the projects that you've worked on, and put them all together in a format to show off maybe future employers or clients, and give you resources to sort of help you out further along in the industry, so that you can sort of take the first steps beyond the class overall. So, in the second half of today, we will discuss the new assignments here in week 4. It kind of slows down a bit. There is no brand new game composition, since we don't have a week 5 to do any sort of peer review, any sort of feedback there. So we have our last round of assignments, which is basically taking the projects that you've worked on and preparing them in a format to best show off the work. So that's what we have in store in the second half. The first half here will be a discussion of basically our last round of feedback and peer review. So last week, your main composition was what is known as a chiptune composition, where you were utilizing the restrictions of the original Nintendo and Famicom systems to create a music track or composition that still has interesting thematic ideas and development overall, but fits within the restrictions. The general idea is all of week 3, we're really talking about technology. We're talking about, we've had the music, or you've created the music, you have created all the sound effects, and now you took those assets and you used the software known as Wise to implement them and have it all working. And then the main topics for the week are talking about audio middleware and game engines, some of the main tools that are used for audio specifically, or just games in general. And these are the main kind of tool sets out there that professional companies use to create all of the games that you play. So we talked about where technology is now in 2018, 2019. And to get a sense of how far we've come with all of this, we throw you back all the way to the original restrictions of the Nintendo and have you create a composition with those tools. So we had our last round of peer review, or the last kind of open discussion post in week 3, and I have 4 submissions here. Let's do that. 4 submissions to take a listen to. This composition was not interactive, did not need to loop. It was just more of a traditional linear composition. But the main thing, again, was sort of operating within those restrictions. The main restrictions and tools that you were given You were provided a logic session. Inside of that logic session were 4 initial tracks. Each one of those tracks has an EXS24 sampler on it with a series of sound banks that were samples of the original Nintendo system and the original Famicom system. What was basically the instruments, the sounds that were used for all of these original game compositions. So you had to use the sounds that were provided. You were limited to 4 simultaneous voices. So you could have as many different tracks as you want, but at any time, no more than 4 voices playing at once. One restriction kind of in that light that we did not follow is you can use chords. You can use polyphony. The original Nintendo system had 4 channels, each of them monophonic, but that's one of the restrictions that we didn't really stick to. Some people will keep it monophonic on all 4 voices, but it's not like a gradable offense or anything like that. Some other things that we didn't follow, like kicks and drums, kick, snare, hi-hat, all that counts as 1, which most of the time it works unless you're doing kick, snare, and hi-hat all together or in any sort of combination. And we also provided some effects. There are a EQ. There wasn't an EQ. There was some very simple filtering, but it's in the ballpark. They could sort of mimic a delay by repeating a note and just reducing the volume of it each time, so that we have a delay effect. There's reverb. They could do some very, very primitive kind of simulation of reverb, but we threw Space Designer on there just to have that effect. So not entirely within the restrictions, but still gives us most of the sound and technique that we were was prevalent in this sort of music. So we have 4 submissions here. We're going to take a listen to each one of them. I'm just going to play the MP3, which was the final delivery. We'll also take a look at the screenshot, which also always takes me a little bit to make it fit on the screen here. And the other thing, so I'll talk about each one of them that we have here. Compositional approaches. We discussed the idea that faster, more staccato compositions work quite well. The sounds are kind of somewhat simplistic. Some might even say boring overall. If you sat on a note too long, they do get very static. They just kind of sit there as these saw waves or triangle waves or square waves. Not saw waves. Noise channel, those kind of sounds. And there's a lot of interesting things you can do, but they typically work in sort of the more faster paced, up-tempo, more staccato type of composition. So don't stick around on the notes too long, and they often can get great effects. Whole waves, bro. Definitely stuck to 4 mono channels. Yep, that would be the more proper approach overall, certainly. Then what else? Fast arpeggiated runs, like turning on arpeggiators and setting them to 8ths or 16ths or 32nds or 64ths and having them kind of sweep through chords works very well. Parallel thirds and parallel fifths or just parallel intervals typically work well. There's all sorts of kind of effect kind of sounds, since a lot of the sound effects were, well, all of the sound effects were generated from these simple waveforms. You could recreate even a lot of the different types of effects, sound effects that were prevalent in those types of games. So I think that is the general target we are aiming for. The other thing I like to do is to discuss any sort of game that you might think it is from, or like what sort of game does this evoke as you listen to the music. So if you have any ideas, go ahead and post it up in the chat. And I'll always come up with something like, what type of game are you playing where you're hearing the music? here. So let's see what we have. Let me get this out of the way so we can see. Well, you can kind of see it's a little small. But let's go ahead and take a listen. Here in the chat, head bobs uncontrollably. Absolutely. Definitely has a great groove to it overall. All right, so some of the things that I hear here. First off, initial groove overall works very well. I'm thinking like puzzle game or like a sports game of some description. Something that's like competitive but not like evil or scary or anything like that. It's very positive and upbeat overall. I would change the rhythm at some point to create some variation and then come back to this groove. Like, so what it seems here, like you've got this first section here, which is a great way to start. Then you've got sort of the parallel movement between, I'm going to guess there are different sounds at different octaves, or anyway, there's just some parallel movement doing the same thing on these two. But in this section, I would probably switch up that groove, or maybe even switch it up when you get here. And then it breaks back in, and you got the next layer here. I would say that this section where with the parallel movement, here in the chat, I'm getting mad track and field vibes. Yeah, like or California Games or any of those kind of fun. Oh, the track and field. That was the one with the pads, right? That you like have to run on. You actually sit down on the floor and hit with your hands. That was the real secret. So anyway, the parallel movement with the 3 tracks, they have. It does feel like a little empty when there's these little pauses. Little stop, little pause. So I would probably use this 3rd track to have something that's a little bit more sustained to kind of fill in those little gaps. And again, to create more variation throughout. So yeah, it's like keep all this initial stuff, maybe change up the drums through here, change this 3rd, I don't actually know which one, but let's say this is, I don't know how different each one of these is, but take one of these 3 and make it more sustained all the way through, and then bring it all the way back. But, oops. So those are, yeah, those are the things that I'm hearing there. A good kind of vibe overall. Definitely would fit for kind of some type of game. A sports game or puzzle game or something like that. All right, let's try the next one here. All right, let's do this down, this up, something like that. Something like that. All right. When I see a 5th track, I gotta like double check that they're not 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, looks cool. Looks like it's dancing around a little bit between the different tracks. Very good. Cool. Excellent. Very, very good. Michiru Yamane meets Hirumi Fujita. Exactly. Oh, man. Great ideas all the way through. Great changes and technique. There's a couple things that I really enjoyed overall. Number one, the pacing of it and the change in the pacing of the percussion overall, right? So we got this kind of groove here, and then it takes off here, sort of its double time feel. So that's definitely one of the elements that works. I also like the kind of two strong techniques, the fast arpeggiated. I mean, I don't even know, they aren't necessarily arpeggiators, but just very, very quick sort of runs and the kind of swirls arpeggiated through a chord. It sounds like everything was just either recorded at a slower pace and sped up or actually drawn in. And then the sort of chorusing double effect that happens every once in a while. Right? That. And I think that's some of that parallel movement also that works very, very well. And then switching between the different layers. At any point, you've got a different combination of these 5 layers. I mean, maybe a little bit like, here's a section where they're all the same, but this is different than this, which is different than this, which is different than this, all the way down to the end. So, and this is all just kind of build up. So those types of changes, those quick switches and changes between the different tonality with fast staccato movement, and then the arpeggiated and parallel runs, all of that stuff creates that sort of texture and that familiarity with this kind of style and the tools that were given at the time. So game, I instantly, from right here, I was like, I have a complete Contra vibe. Like, 2-player co-op shooter. Or some, like, military, or like, I'm a super soldier from the 21st and a half century, and we're fighting off all the aliens, and that kind of stuff. Or maybe like a spaceship flying game, where there's all those spaceships flying at me and asteroids and all that stuff that I gotta... Whatever it is, it's fast-paced. So, excellent work. Very sort of indicative of the style and the aesthetic overall. Fits very nicely. Let's do this. Oops. Something like that. And this. great melodic development, great sort of progression and feel all the way through. I definitely hear two things. One is a balloon game, like some sort of flying game. It's almost like Let's Go Fly a Kite kind of vibe to it. And I love the other kind of game, or not a game, but like I just won. I think that's what I felt right in the beginning was Harvest Moon, yeah, something like that, something that is, or like what's the other one, Stardew Valley, that kind of thing, where it is something pleasing. I'm farming, or I'm what is that, resource gathering or anything like that. But yeah, definitely something very light and pleasing. I love the dissonance in there. Like very strong use of, or like good deliberate use of the dissonance. And these really solid waveforms that, I mean, dissonance is really obvious, and it can be like just totally screw things up. It can really mess with the overall composition, but the dissonance here is very intentional and very well used overall, where you didn't have to keep everything so major and diatonic. You can use those chromatic notes to breathe more of that sort of waltzy feel to it, or the sort of sliding back and forth. Definitely feel like I'm in some sort of floaty flying machine while I pop balloons or score points or something like that. Whatever it is, I think fits a very specific and intentional, again, kind of game, and it would work well for that. Yeah, and everything. Yeah, the where it goes melodically and harmonically fits very nicely. All right, what was this? Harvest Moon, waiting to hear the dog barks and the dialogue. All right, let's check out yours. Here we go. Make that all fit there. And bring this up. All right, here we go. trying to transcend my inner Undertale. Absolutely, I could definitely hear the tinges of all of that. So let's bring it back over here. All right. So again, good interaction between the different layers, the harmony and the melody. I like the change in the percussion, or kind of the change in the rhythm and the pulse of everything. Kind of halfway through here. Once this kind of lead line comes in, it creates some good change and development over the top. There's you can see with each one of theirs a bit of a different shape on each one. One thing that I would kind of consider is that it does feel like it has a bit of a song form, which would be not as useful in a game. Let me talk a moment about like the form of everything. So here you have the drums that start things off. Then you bring in the bass, and I'll just call this harmony. And then you play it again, and it takes a little while to get where I would consider more of the interest, which is like you're having them wait until about 30 seconds into it to where the actual kind of the stronger, more interesting elements come in. So once you hit this lead line, then you're good for a while, and then you have the change here. The other thing is, I feel like it, again, takes a little long to get to the change. It's the idea of song form versus like telling a story or supporting the story in the game. So consider it where you are reflecting different changes in the action in the game. So if there is a little bit of build up, you could probably get away with like this section right here to start out with, so that there is a little bit of an upward movement when the lead line comes in. And so consider this, let's see, while listening to this, I could definitely get an Undertale theme to it, or like some sort of exploration. I'm the hero. It's not like super overjoyous victory, but it's also not like, oh no, destruction and danger and scary stuff. It's kind of sort of in the middle there, where like Undertale, where it's a little it kind of floats between both sides. So describe, like, musically, describe the hero, describe what action sounds like, describe what tension or stealth sounds like, describe what winning, losing is, all of those different kind of story plot points through the music. And I think you are doing that with the lead lines here, and then like the switch here. So this is what maybe action sounds like, and then maybe something goes into more of a minor feel, and like, oh no, bad things are happening. Then it goes to major, like, oh yay, I've succeeded in this. To kind of work, not to say that this would need to follow all of that, but consider following this sort of story arc overall, very generically, but trying to describe those things with the music. I would kind of point in that direction versus more of the song form. Sometimes what you'll get is like intro and then here added add in one layer and then add another layer, and then where would like the vocal would come in and the beat comes in and the verse one, and then you get like a chorus and a bridge, and that sort of structure doesn't fit as well overall. Not to say, I mean, maybe a little bit in the beginning here, but once it hits through here and you got through the changes, all of that's pretty solid overall. So let's see. It doesn't take itself seriously, but it's uncomfortable. We didn't have one of those last week. So yeah, overall, very good. Everybody kind of fit within the boundaries. These compositions are a challenge in their own right. Some people love the composition because it's sort of nostalgic and it gives you an opposition to work with some of the, I mean, not the same tools, but the same sounds overall and the overall aesthetic. And one positive thing that I think really leans into it is that it takes away all of the production. Here are the sounds. Here's the palette of sounds that you're going to work with. You're not going to get lost in presets. All the sounds are relatively boring on their own, and it's all about the composition. So it gets really quickly into melody, harmony, and rhythm, and that's where the focus is. So often, even though the sounds are quite limited, the compositions can be really quite strong. I mentioned here, Alfonso killed it. Yeah, I mean, overall, you get strong compositions, good changes, good use of the synths and the technology. And so some people love it because it gets them directly into the composition very quickly. Other people feel kind of handcuffed by this assignment. They're like, well, what did you do? You took away all of my toys, you took away all of my presets and my sounds and my, like, all of the production tools, all of the synths and sampler libraries and all this stuff. Yeah, and that's sort of the and one of the intentions overall is to get you exposed to this type of production and music, and again compare it to where you are now. So another idea that I always like to encourage with this type of composition, another place to take it is, so what is here, what we have composed now, represents the limitations. The big portion of this composition is the creating an impressive composition utilizing and operating within the restrictions that were given. So that says, if you took away all of my tools and we were thrown back to the dawn of game audio, I could still write impressive, thematic, fun, groovy, rhythmic music that is very appropriate for a game. So what I encourage is to take this composition as it is, and at some point, probably halfway through, take off the handcuffs and have no restrictions and have it sort of morph and change into fully, or I don't know if it needs to be orchestral, but fully orchestrated, instrumented, using any and all instruments, using any and all production techniques, no restrictions on track counts and on all of that stuff. To then say, if we had all the money in the world and all the time and all the budget, here's all of the amazing music. And it's still the same kernel of thematic, strong composition that can translate. It's still strong rhythm, melody, harmony that translates between whatever production style. To say, I mean, it's like hearing the original Super Mario theme and then hearing a big band do it. It's still the same core composition, but it doesn't have the limited restrictions. So other ways of considering building on the project overall to kind of giving you kind of a jumping off point beyond the initial composition. So good work overall. Again, we're going to switch it over to the archive with the assignments, last round of assignments for week 4. If you have any questions about any sort of troubleshooting issues with Wise, any sort of technical issues with the rest of the assignments and finishing out the month, or if you want to talk more about the industry and any other aspects of getting involved, please reach out to me. This is certainly, this week is now the time to do all that stuff so that you can get everything wrapped up on your end to head in free to your final project for last month. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up there, and we'll switch it over to the archive. We'll meet again on Thursday. Come equipped with any questions if you have any. Other than that, thank you very much, and I will see you again on Thursday. Right, so we have our submissions there. Like I said, the focus of this week is your final week is to take the information and the projects that you've worked on and put them in the best light to show them off beyond beyond the class and beyond your time at Full Sail, and be able to show the work off that you've done and completed, hopefully to future employers and future clients and whatnot. So as you have been progressing through all of your classes, you certainly should be gathering together as much of your classwork and materials and projects that you've been working on and put it together into a strong demo reel to show that off. And that includes these game projects. They are well and good as grades and as projects for a class, but their real intention is to give you a vehicle to show off your music and to show off your work and be able to demonstrate that off out there as you get started in the industry. So we are going to talk about the best way of showing off your music that is intended to play back in the game is to actually have somebody play the game. The best way of demonstrating your music for a game is to actually demo that game. So you have the game projects, you have the game applications, and you can distribute those as you wish. They are yours. They are free for you, free for educational purposes, free for demo purposes. The only thing is you just you would indicate that you did all of the music and sound, but you don't claim that you created the game. But they are for you to put on a website, put in Dropbox, and send it around to future clients or future employers, and to show off your work. However, there are some limitations, mostly like technical limitations, with demonstrating your game. The first one is it's a Mac game, and so whoever wants to play the game needs to have a Mac computer in order to play it. The games can be put in or made as PC games, but that takes a lot of extra understanding and programming to convert the projects. I mean, it is possible, but mostly you have a Mac application. And so somebody has to have a Mac, and maybe whoever you're sending this off to has a computer and they can check it out. They have to have a computer powerful enough to play the games. That isn't as much of an issue as it used to be, as people's computers have progressively gotten better over the years and have started with better computers. We really don't have much of an issue running these projects. So then you have another issue of very smart people on the internet won't probably just download some random application and run it on their computer. You would be very smart not to just download random zip files and open them up and play them on your computer. Now, of course, that's not the case with these applications, and they aren't. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but just a random link on a website, you're not going to get tons of people just saying, okay, sure, I'm just going to download this unknown application and run it. So you need to have some way of showing off your work. You need to have some way of people being able to see your music working in a game. You could just take like one of your main loop files and put it up on SoundCloud and say, hey, here's a loop that I wrote for a game. And I promise it works in the game. So the best way of showing off your music working in the game is actually having the game to show off. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a video capture of you playing the game with your music and sound effects working. So by this point in the month, you have composed the music for both of these projects, created all the sound effects. We had an opportunity for peer review, and you also got feedback for your submission. You have the opportunity to do any revisions or changes to that composition or those sound effects. Last week you used Wise and used an audio middleware tool to connect your music and your sound effects working in the game. You got it working in the game, you tested it out, you played the game, and you listened to your sound effects and your music, and more than likely found some issues with it. I mean, I guess you could knock it out of the park the first time every single time, but most of the time you get it in the game and there's yeah, I don't know, 75, 80% of it's all right, but there's another 20% there that I need to tweak and to change. So you go back to your sounds and you tweak your sounds a little bit. You go back to your music and you mix your files and you bounce everything out again. And you test it, put it back in the game, test it out. And that is a very constant kind of revision or iteration cycle where you compose something, you say, I think this is going to work. You put it in the game, go, man, that kind of works, but I need to do this. Then you go back and you fix it, you put it back in the game, you test it out, and you go around and around. So once you get everything set up in the game, then now you're ready to do this final video capture. It basically proves the process that you have created all the music and sound effects, put it in the game, tested it out, and have something to show for it. So you will be using QuickTime and a program called Loopback in order to capture the video on the screen, or the game on the screen. All right, so let me talk about how you will set this up and how this will actually work. So actually I can just do this real quick. When you go on FSO, here's week 4. Here's your final game captures assignment. Notice that it is 0 weighted. That doesn't mean that you don't have to do it. It's just not turned in here. You are going to turn it down here in the final project delivery. So don't just ignore the assignment because it is 0 weighted. But it provides you with all the material. It says you will submit this YouTube link in a separate assignment on FSO. Final game capture. So you'll get a PDF here, and you'll get a PDF here. And the first one just gives you mostly just an overview and delivery instructions. Just kind of a real quick summary of how it all works and how to deliver everything here. But there's a separate PDF that goes slide by slide and goes into a lot more detail. So let me just take a look at this here. You will use QuickTime, which is already installed on your computer, and a program called Loopback in order to capture audio inside of your computer. Loopback is a free application. You can just go to the link here. Well, it's not a free application. It costs $99, but you don't need the $99 version. I don't know, unless you completely love the application and you want to support these people, but really you just need the free download for our purposes. The limitation with the free download is that it lasts for 15 minutes, and you only need to record for a minute or two. So if for some reason the 15 minutes runs out, then you just shut down the program and open it back up, and you got another 15 minutes. But after a while, it starts blasting white noise at you, so make sure if you hear that, that's what's going on there. So you just download the Loopback, and what it is it is a virtual audio cable application for your computer. Meaning, you are going to record the video using QuickTime. You've probably used QuickTime at some point. This is actually QuickTime down here for all of my videos. QuickTime is just capture the video from your webcam, or actually in this instance it's going to capture the actual screen, but QuickTime doesn't allow you to do audio from inside of your computer. Actually, here's a better view of it. This is what it looks like when you open up and do the screen recording, and when you hit this down arrow, it doesn't allow you to record from inside of your own computer, because of all sorts of nefarious copyright reasons. They don't want you recording everything that's ever been played through your entire computer, but for our purposes, it's your music. You want to record it, so you need to have a way of actually doing that. That's where Loopback comes in. And when you download Loopback and you run it, it looks like this. Here. And it says, hey, click here to create a new virtual device. And when you create a new virtual device, it's actually creating like an audio interface inside of your computer. Just like you take a cable and you go cable out of a guitar into an amp, or just a cable out of one thing into another. This takes a cable, a virtual cable, and goes out of your game into QuickTime. If I look at my audio MIDI setup now, it actually adds an extra interface to run everything through. And when you do that and you go back to QuickTime, oh my goodness. Hello, computer. There it goes. When you come back here and look in here, you should now have a loopback audio interface. Once you do all of that, the other thing you need to do is come in here and you need to tell it to actually go what application you want to record. And you want it to point to 2D Platformer or Angry Bots, whichever one you're recording. Right here. And when you do that, it shows up here. You will be able to, I don't want to do this right now, but you want to be able to listen through your speakers. You uncheck the mute audio sources so that you can hear everything. And then you go run the game, and you should be able to meter it. Once you play the game, you should see some meters here inside of the screen recording, and you know at that point that it's working. When you get this set up, you might hear it doubled up, like it might monitor back twice. Depends on how you have your audio set up, but it either can be this, it could be monitoring through QuickTime, which could be this fader. It could be this setting, monitor through audio through whatever your output is. So double check those just to make sure. The other thing is, if you hear it doubled, it doesn't actually capture doubled. So you can just hit record anyway. You'll monitor it doubled, and then you'll listen. The video will be fine. So just a couple of pointers there. So you'll install Loopback. You'll set up for the screen recording. Like I said, you'll create a new virtual device. You'll select the game application that you want to run. You check the checkboxes. You open up QuickTime. You set up a new screen recording. I showed you this where you click the little arrow and you want to set up to Loopback so that you can record inside of QuickTime. At that point, you should see meters. And you can hit record. Depends on if you have like two screens set up. If you're just recording on your one screen, you can either click and drag just a portion of your screen if it's in a window, or you can just click and it will record the entire screen. Depends on how you have it set up. The only thing to watch out for is most of everybody's computers now have Retina displays, and that's like a really super high resolution. And if you do the entire full screen, it might just slow everything down trying to capture all that stuff. It just might be something to watch out for. I got a couple more slides on that. So the best thing to do is run it in a window and just kind of highlight over the window so that it only captures. You don't capture all of your messy desktop and all this extra stuff. You just capture exactly what you want. So it starts the screen capture. You can run like I said, you can run it in a window. If you click this little checkbox, it says it's in a window. If you unclick this checkbox, it says it's not in a window. More than likely, you've played the game up to this point. You probably know how best it is to run. You've probably already set all this stuff, if you even had to mess with it at all. So more than likely, it's just fine. But if things start acting screwy while trying to do the recording, some of these settings can help. So you hit record when you're ready to go, and you start recording and demonstrating the game. The actual content of the video, I leave that very much up to you. It's your demo video. It's what you want to show off and how you want to show it off. What I'm most concerned with, most focused on, is the process. The fact that you have the game, you have the music and sound effects working in the game. That's a huge portion of the project that you're now demonstrating. And you also have QuickTime, and you've got Loopback or something installed. I guess I should also point out, if you already have and you use something like Soundflower or Audio Hijack, those things are identical to Loopback, or at least in our function, for what we need. And so you can use those pieces of software, as long as it doesn't watermark it or do anything weird with the video or audio. If you already have it set up in a certain way, you can use that. But once you've captured this video, you show that you have all of the sound effects and music working in the game, and you can do a video capture. You have the game playing back. You're using QuickTime and something like Loopback to capture the audio. And so if later on you have a different project or different sounds, you want to redo this one, you can always just create new video captures to show the work that you've done. Demonstrate all the music and sound design. The other thing to point out is I do not count every single sound effect, meaning that I don't track that you have triggered every single sound effect in every piece of music, because I know that a lot of it, or some of it, is left up to chance. You can't always trigger every single music file because it's random. So you're going to get 3 intros, 3 main loops, and only 2 of the endings will play within about 2 minutes long. We suggest that the videos be around 1 minute to 2 minutes long, which is right here. Oops. Right. Oh, there it is. Video capture should be no longer than 2 minutes. So again, the content is up to you. How you demonstrate it is up to you. I would suggest a big one is don't play the game like you're trying to win the game. Don't just do the video capture just to show off how good you are at playing the game. It's about showing off all of the sounds. One common thing that I'll see especially with 2D platformer, is I'll hear the intro and then they'll start playing the game, and for a minute or two I'll just see them play the game, and they'll never die, or they'll just die once at the end and stop the video, and that means I only saw 1 intro and 1 ending. You created 4 other files and never showed anybody. So die a couple of times, jump off the edge, trigger some of those ending cues, try to trigger as many of the sound effects as possible, and just show it off in its best light overall. Then you stop the screen recording. You save the screen recording, name it your last name, your first name, GCP Week4 2D platformer, whatever or Angry Bots. Do not name it last name, first name. Your name isn't last name, first name. You have a last name. You have a first name. Please, it happens every month. Somebody at some point names something last name, first name. So just watch out for that. And then please, please, please check your screen recording. Watch the video after it's done. This happens. I mean, most people do this, no problem. But for some reason, I will always, every month, I'll get a series of videos that either the audio is just missing, or they used the internal microphone on their computer it played out of their computer speakers and then back into the internal microphone. And if it didn't feed back, then it sounds horrible. It just sounds really thin, and you hear them in the background like breathing and clicking on their keyboard, and it's really kind of weird. And you hear their dog barking in the background and their family running around or whatever it is. So just watch out for that. Double check the video. Make sure it has the correct content of it. It has the correct thing that you captured. The other thing is don't hit record and record it for 2 minutes the first time, because there's no telling if you got it right the first time. So just hit record for a few seconds, and then stop it and check the recording and make sure you're actually capturing the thing you think you're recording. So you don't have to do it over and over again and waste any time. A couple optional tips. Clear off the desktop. If you are capturing any aspect of the desktop, it's probably best to just make it as clear as possible. I know a lot of folks, we have audio directors and people in different game teams come and talk to our Full Sail student, or come talk to our students. And they'll say often, if we see screenshots or things and it just looks like you have a messy desktop and you posted up a video and it just looks like things are all over the place, it's not probably going to help your cause overall, because a lot of people don't want to work with that. So you can either do a full screen or a high resolution recording. You can do a low resolution recording. If more than likely the video capture is just going to work just fine. Every once in a while, depending on people's computers and whatever they're running or how they have it set up, this might start making your computer chug a little bit, because you got to play the game and do a video capture at the same time. If that is the case, then as long as the audio doesn't stutter or doesn't drop out, if the video kind of gets slow or choppy, that's fine. For the purposes of the video, for the grade and for the assignment, that's fine. Obviously, you want to make as a high quality video as possible. I wouldn't really even consider just focusing on the fact that it's an assignment. Create a proper and a demo video that you can use beyond the class. So if need be, try shrinking down the resolution of the game. Maybe even try shrinking down the resolution of your monitor and your screen. That might help create smoother videos overall. Once you have done the video for both Angry Bots and 2D Platformer, you're going to post them up on YouTube. Just put them up there. You can put it just so that I can view it. You don't have to make it completely public, but don't make it private. Make sure that you post it up and you can share the link and have everybody reference it. So the assignment of the video capture is really getting everything set up. Once it's working, then it's just playing the game and just showing off how your music and sound effects sound in the game. All right, so that is your final video capture. And to then show it off, or then to kind of deliver the final version of everything back here on FSO. The kind of big assignment for this week is your final project delivery. And this is going to be basically, it's a 10-question test, but it's not like a test that you study for because you have all the answers. It's just really a summary of your composition. So it's broken down into two halves. 5 of the questions are for 2D Platformer, 5 of the questions for Angry Bots. They're very similar to each other. The first one is 2D Platformer video capture. Provide the YouTube link to your 2D Platformer game capture video. So you just did the video capture, you uploaded it to YouTube, now post the YouTube link here. Make sure that it works. You can always go into incognito mode to check links. That's how I do a lot of my stuff with YouTube and Google. Since I have like a personal login for YouTube and Google, but whenever I want to do any Full Sail stuff, you just go into incognito mode and it forgets who you are, and then you can log in as whatever you want. So if you just double check all the links that you're going to send me, make sure that they work. You can use incognito mode to do that, or send them to somebody else, and then that's how I will be able to check it also. So give me a YouTube link. This is actually quite important. A missing YouTube link or a missing audio track in a video renders the submission ungradable. If I can't hear it, if I can't hear your music and your sound effects, or the video doesn't work, or the link doesn't work, I can't grade the rest of the assignment. So make sure the video is there and working. Then you'll send me a screenshot of your DAW session. You will, this is the 2D platformer instrumentation. List the instruments that you used in the intros, main loop, and ending cues. Name any synths or sample library sources for all the tracks. So you will tell me what instruments you used. Tell me in the intros, the main loops, and the endings, which synths, which drums. Don't just tell me I used a piano and I used a banjo and an organ and a synthesizer. Tell me which presets, which sample libraries, which synthesizers you used, which presets you used, so that the idea is if somebody else had to recreate this session, they knew what instruments. They could go load up those, assuming that they had the same instrumentation that you did. Somebody could kind of recreate all of this stuff if necessary. Next, 2D platformer transitions. You will take screenshots of your intros, your main loops, and your endings, and then line them up in a particular way. You are going to take your intro 1 and connect it to main loop 2, and then connect it to ending 3. And then take intro 2 and connect it to main loop 3, and then go to ending 1. And then take intro 3 and go to main loop 1, and go to ending 2. I guess I could just read it up here. Basically, it's taking all of your tracks and rearranging them into different orders, taking a screenshot of it, and then answering a few questions, like describe what you listen to each track. How does the music transition from one cue to the next? Describe what you hear. Does the intensity of the music build with the intro cue? Are the same instruments heard from the intros through the main loops and the endings? Are there any hiccups or pops as the music shifts from one music cue to the next? So these are just basic overview. How well did it work? Did it sound as you expected? Just kind of give me insight into the final product. Then you will create a screenshot of your final mix. Give me a peak level and an RMS level. Use the level meter plugin found in Logic, just so I can get an overview of your levels. AngryBots section is very much very similar. AngryBots video capture. Provide the YouTube link for that. Give me a screenshot of your AngryBots session. And list the instrumentation used in your ambient, buzzer action, mech action, and spider action cues. Then you'll take your 4 files, line them all up together, ambient, buzzer action, mech action, spider action, and then basically comment the same way. How did it work? Listen to your cues playing back together. Describe what you hear. How well did the cues play back? Are there any noticeable issues? Do the cues start and end at the same time? Are there any rhythms that clash? Do the melodies or harmonies clash? Just to get an overview of how well the main portion of the composition worked. Give me a summary with a screenshot of your AngryBots mix. So really, it's just kind of like a post-mortem overview, summary, summation of how well everything worked in the final projects. So that is the direction we are headed in this last week. Please let me know if you have any questions going to stick around here for a few minutes if you have any questions. But again, this is the last week. Let me know if you are having any challenges or anything that you need to discuss in the final part of the week. But we have one more class on Thursday. We can listen to or discuss or anything that you need, or take a look at your final video. But other than that, let's end it there. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again on Thursday.